upgrade, accelerate your project by archiving first. Today's presenters are Mark, COO, S28, and Julie Lochner, Senior Analyst and Vice President, ESG. Mark Hebert joined S28 in December 2008 as Chief Operating Officer. 2006 to 2008, he was the first Chief Marketing Officer for Virtusa Corporation, a publicly traded IT services firm. He also spent 11 years at Oracle Corporation as President in a variety of Oracle e-business suite roles. Julie Lochner is a recognized leader industry expert in the structured data management market. Julie served a full role at ESG as Senior Analyst and Vice President, covering data management solutions and manager of ESG's end-user practice. We'll be emailing a link to the recorded webinar to all that registered. Thank you, Mark and Julie, for presenting, and I'll turn the webinar over to you now.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. I really appreciate the great attendance at our webinar this morning. This is the second in a series of webinars that we're running on enterprise data management this year. And our topic today is really near and dear to my heart, and I'll explain why here in a moment. We're going to cover three things over about 20 to 30-minute period. So this will be short and quick, and then we'll take questions. I want to talk a little bit about introducing the topic around Oracle applications. And by that I mean the family of products that Oracle now owns, and either through acquisition or natively, and that includes Oracle e-Business Suite, Siebel, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, and all the vertical related applications that Oracle goes to market with. So I'll tee that up, and then Julie will talk a little bit about some of her primary research that her firm, ESG, has been doing in this whole area to give you a sense of what Oracle customers are saying about their priorities this year. And then I want to talk, thirdly, after Julie is done, about the whole idea of embedding an archiving strategy into your planned upgrade. And we'll get into a little bit of detail about the products that we implement for this in this area that is called IBM Optim. Okay. So I said that I sort of have a unique perspective in all of this, and that's because I was at Oracle in the very early days of Oracle applications, what became Oracle e-Business Suite. In fact, I started a number of those product teams, Oracle Manufacturing, Oracle HR, and a few other products. And in those days, we felt like we were changing the world in terms of a new generation of ERP systems on what we called open systems in those days, which was Unix. Well, move ahead, fast forward 20 years later, and we have quite a large number of customers now that have been using these products, whether it's Oracle e-Business Suite or Siebel, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, for some of them for over 10, 15 years. And I can tell you from personal experience that in those days, we at Oracle were not very concerned about how data would ultimately come out of those products. We were only concerned about how to get the data in. And so those products, by and large, are very good at accumulating data, but Oracle itself has no real interest in helping their customers get the data out. And so data accumulates over time. And for most customers, once the data is more than a couple of years old, it's really not used very much for most of the applications. And so this phenomenon of data cholesterol starts to kick in, meaning that a lot of data gets accumulated, and it has the potential to really affect performance, especially if users have the ability to run their own queries and reports that start doing full table scans. And pretty soon you can have significant performance degradation and real spikes in your ability to maintain good performance. So that's kind of the key background that sets the stage. Now on top of that, the other significant trend that's going on is that many customers are in various stages of upgrading their versions of Oracle applications, whether it's Oracle e-Business Suite and R12 or the latest versions of PeopleSoft, Siebel, JD Edwards. I think that we're seeing quite a bit of uptake by customers this year in major upgrade projects. And it turns out that this data cholesterol phenomenon has a pretty significant impact for many customers on their upgrade projects themselves, meaning that when you have a lot of data that you're trying to upgrade, it has a big impact on the project plan. Many upgrade plans have multiple test cycles, and when you're running the upgrade through each test cycle, it takes a lot of time. So it stretches the whole planning window for your upgrade. It also, when you get to the real production run, it also threatens your availability window. You only have so much time, say over a weekend, to go live with the upgrade, and if you're taking a lot of time to run it, it could really threaten production. And then lastly, the more data you have, the more chances that you've got data that is messy, dirty, and can also clog up the whole process of your upgrade. So in a nutshell, it's worth taking the time to think about how to streamline your production database before you upgrade, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to turn it over to Julie now and let her talk about the process of some of the survey data that she's come up with. Julie?
Thank you very much, Mark. And one of the things that we do at the Enterprise Strategy Group is we take a look at peer groups to say, for those organizations that are managing database environments, what are the top challenges? And go ahead, Mark, if you want to go to the next slide. One of the things that we do before we talk about customers and how they manage their data growth and manage databases, we look at a macro view and ask questions that have to do with their IT spending intentions. So every year we publish an IT spending intention survey to really get a pulse of where the decision makers are in terms of how they make decisions on what IT technology they're going to procure in the next 12 to 18 months. And if we summarize what we saw in last year, the end of last year's results, coming into 2012, most organizations are recovering from our 2008 global financial crisis, and they have looked at processes and looking at eliminating waste by improving the key business process. Number two key initiative was controlling costs while staying competitive. We see a lot more organizations seeing 24/7 demands in their business operations and looking at more real-time operations. So it's not, not surprising to see that the key message at the end of our survey was that most of these IT decision makers really are looking at making purchases that will help them get the most for their money. So we go to the next slide. When we looked at the details specifically, what were the most important considerations in justifying IT investments? Just to blow up on these three particular answers, one thing that we've seen trending over the last few years is that the number one influencer was a reduction on operational expenditure for several years running. This is the first year in 4 years that we see business process improvement taking the lead in terms of the most important consideration. And what that means is that people have figured out ways to figure out cutting costs. They've done enough cutting costs. Now they want to look at where's the waste in the business process. And one area that we drill down in particular in the market coverage on data management side is, where are the areas that we can improve on a business process perspective related to our database applications. So if we go to the next slide, one of the questions that we asked was, if you look at where there are challenges in managing your database environments, you can see that the top challenge across the board is managing data growth and database size. A couple of the other ones that are listed here, keeping up with database performance requirements, maintaining security and compliance. And anyone who has played a role in managing an application like Oracle Business Suite or PeopleSoft know that as data accumulates in the underlying database, if you don't scale the underlying infrastructure, the first thing that could potentially get hit is performance. And just like Mark was mentioning, as everybody looks at going through an upgrade, the more data that's in your underlying database, the longer those processes take. And it just makes a compounding problem. And in fact, I've never seen, Mark was talking about the different applications over the years, and I've implemented a few and gone through a few upgrades myself. I have never seen a schema get smaller as part of the upgrade. In fact, I think I've seen on the average of 20 to 30% increase in size because Oracle continually adds columns and tables to their schemas. So I've never really seen the database get smaller as part of an upgrade. So when you look at these top data management challenges in light of an upgrade, more data just makes that problem worse. So if you go to the next slide, we wanted to ask a little bit more around database growth. And we said if you answered database growth was a top challenge for you, what were the specific challenges with respect to the database size or growth? And one of the things here is an increase in storage capacity requirements. Again, anybody who's gone through the upgrade process knows that it's not just a matter of upgrading the application software, but you also need to provision more storage. You need to align the new SAN attached or NAS attached storage to the servers, and it's a multi-step process. And as a result, if you look at the more data, again, we talked about performance degradation, increasing cost of infrastructure. So there are definitely some hard dollar savings opportunities when it comes to storage capacity requirements when we look at the rest of this presentation. Go ahead to the next slide. The next question we asked was for those organizations that said they had an issue with database performance. We did want to drill down a little bit more into that. What were the reasons why there was poor database performance? And as you can see in this chart here, the number one reason is an increase in transactional workload. And that kind of goes back to the fact that more, as organizations do the upgrade, or they may add more applications to a current implementation, or they roll out new geos or new operating units to the particular application, there will be an increase in transactional workload. What we've actually seen is that this has been the top reason for impacting database performance in the last 4 years, because again, if you go back to where we've been in this, the economic crisis, people are trying to do more with less. So they're trying to add more applications, more functionality, more geos with the same infrastructure. And again, it just is a trickle-down effect. And then the storage I/O bottleneck again becomes kind of part of the process. Too much data. The third answer here is really all about how do you manage data growth as you go forward with these upgrades. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So when we look at how unmanaged data growth impacts performance, in addition to doing quantitative research, we also do qualitative research. We talk to organizations that are going through these types of panels and polls, and we ask them, for example, how do you measure performance if performance is impacted as a result of data growth? And depending on who you ask, you'll get a variety of answers. And these three here are really the top answers that we get when we speak to the end customers. First of all, and I mentioned this several times already, but too much data does have an impact on your production database. As Mark had mentioned a little bit earlier, if you do a full table scan on a data table that has 1 billion rows versus when you first deployed it and only had 100 rows, obviously you're going to see some deterioration unless you upgrade the underlying infrastructure. So performance could be measured by time. How long does it take to complete a report? But also, as Mark also mentioned, we asked, what about test and development cycles? The bigger the production database, the bigger the test and development copies. If you're running all of your regression tests and end-user acceptance tests and integration tests on a full data set, that process can be slowed down because, again, the more data that's in production, the more that's going to be in those copies for those test and development purposes. And then from an operational perspective, how long does it take for you to recover in case of a failure? Everyone knows that backing up and restoring a smaller database it completes in a lot shorter time frame than doing the same on a larger database. And as those databases get bigger and the windows get shorter and shorter because of that global economy, this becomes kind of the tipping point for a lot of organizations. In fact, on a lot of the projects that I've worked on, that last bullet there turns out to be one of those big criteria for why organizations tend to look at other alternatives to managing data growth. So the next slide, please. So to net it out before I turn it back over to Mark, again, when we ask the questions about, what are you doing to manage data growth to address these challenges, the people that we work with and the people that respond to our polls say that one of the things that they want to do is manage and control data growth in their production databases to keep business processes performing as necessary. So what that means is if we can control data growth at the source, that means that we're going to be able to have predictable performance in our production environment as well as downstream processes. The second one is to control the sizes of your test data sets in testing cycles to maintain agility. The smaller the databases are, the faster you'll be able to complete through your test and development cycles, the quicker you'll be able to roll out new features and complete your upgrades. And then the third is, again, back to the backup and recovery windows. If you can control the amount of data that you're backing up and restoring, that just means that you're going to be able to maintain those SLAs. So again, for those of you who are attending this webinar and looking at how to improve your upgrade cycles, your peers are saying the same things that are consistent throughout what we're going to talk about in the rest of the presentation. So I'd love to turn it back over to you, Mark, to finish up to talk about your world.
Thanks, Julie. I think a lot of your data really confirms my observations in talking to a lot of customers every day about the fact that all IT shops now are stretched really thin for resources. And so the impact of all this data cholesterol that we've been talking about really affects their productivity. And so we're seeing the primacy of data management now in terms of priorities within the IT shop. Okay, so what do you do about all this? I want to turn my attention now for a few minutes to an archiving platform that we use with our customers that is ideal for addressing this issue. So our partner is IBM, and there's a product set called Optim that we use in our practice. And over the last few years, we've built what we think is the world's leading practice in enterprise data management using this platform. And by that I mean we've done over 100 projects now in this period of time that are largely for Oracle customers all over the world. And so we've got a lot of data points around all this. The platform that we use is by far the only true enterprise platform. That's validated by a recent Gartner report and other collateral reports in addition to Gartner. The most recent report last September shows the enterprise archiving market share for Optim at 76%, so about 5 times more than the nearest competitor. And I'll talk a little bit about why that is the case with respect to the platform itself. The point here is that a platform like this can be used to really slim down your Oracle application's production database and therefore all of the copies of production in advance of doing an upgrade. And that reduces project risk, and it also leaves you with a nice, clean, and mean production database when you're done that allows you to simplify and streamline your operations after that. Okay, a few minutes about the IBM platform itself. So Optim itself is a family of 5 products. The one we're talking about today is called Data Growth. It's the one in the lower right. And actually in this webinar series, we're kind of going through cycling and covering these different products for different business drivers. I think the last one we did in December spoke to security and data privacy. And we'll be covering some of these other topics in the next few webinars. But we're going to focus on Data Growth, which is the product that we use to do archiving of production databases. The IBM InfoSphere Optim platform has been around for over 20 years. It came originally from Princeton Softtech. It was acquired by IBM in 2007, and it's really been one of IBM's most successful software acquisitions. It's grown to about 2,500 customers, as I mentioned, 76% market share in the last Gartner survey, so by far the market leader as a platform. It covers a whole multitude of business drivers that are listed here. I'm not going to go into any detail about them right now, but suffice it to say that it's a great platform for doing archiving around an upgrade. Why is that the case? Well, there's really 4 key pillars associated with Optim that that drive this platform as a successful one to use. The first one is called the enterprise architecture platform nature of Optim. And the point here is that it's the only true platform for the enterprise, all kinds of applications. It successfully addresses any type of storage device at the bottom layer on virtually any operating system. Going backwards here, sorry. With virtually any database. Of course, most of the Oracle applications ones are on an Oracle database, but some of the legacy products are even on mainframes as well. Some of the PeopleSoft implementations, for example. The whole platform sits on top of this, and it also comes with out-of-the-box what are called access definitions or templates for all of the major ERPs. So Oracle E-Business Suite, Siebel, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, and in fact we're involved in the development of some of those products for IBM, so we have really unique skills associated with all those. And so this platform can be used for any Oracle-based application, but any custom application as well. It really serves very well as the cornerstone of an enterprise data management strategy, and we like to sort of think of the archiving process that is used to do this as creating a new corporate asset that we call the enterprise or corporate archive repository. It can be used for not only archiving live production applications, but also for retiring old applications, again, into the same repository, so you start managing the end of life of data as a corporate asset with a single overall repository that can implement your data retention policy with a standard set of data access tools. And so we're seeing large companies now that we're working with implement this archive repository with a factory model where you do this in repeatable ways. The second pillar is the business object nature of the product that allows you to archive applications as whole business objects. This is an example of the data model for Oracle General Ledger. So when you archive GL in Oracle E-Business Suite, you're typically wanting to really focus on the transaction data. That's where the heavy volume is in terms of data accumulation. And that's represented by these orange boxes, the GL batches, headers, and lines. That's most of the data in GL. But to archive that data successfully such that it's a whole business object, you want to bring along other kinds of data as well. So the data in the gray boxes, which is various kinds of GL, meaningful GL data related to those transactions, as well as various reference data that's shown in the green, currencies and so on. And so when you extract all that data with that reference data, you are able then to have a repository with a snapshot in time every time you run an archive that allows you to look at that data as the whole business object self-contained. You don't have to go referring to production or anything else for that, for making that data meaningful. That doesn't mean you delete it from production, you just copy it over into the archive. And so the concept with Optim is that you're archiving whole business objects. The third major pillar is that you're archiving this data as an immutable archive file, which is very important from a compliance and an audit standpoint, so that you have assurance when you create that archive that it will last in time, it can't be manipulated, and can be relied upon for legal and audit purposes. And with Optim, you get that capability. You can also then restore that data or copy it back into another database if you want for other kinds of purposes, like, say, high-volume reporting or legal hold functionality. Or you can actually restore it back into production if for some reason you decided you shouldn't have archived it in the first place. And you can do that in a very granular level or as a whole archive itself. And then the last pillar of this platform is the notion of universal access. So with Oracle E-Business Suite or Siebel or PeopleSoft or JD Edwards, you get a certain amount of capability to view the archive data natively from the forms and reports of the native application. But if you have a favorite report writer, or even would like to use, say, an open source report writer, you have that ability as well to go after an archive file with basically any tool that's popular in the market. And so those are the set of capabilities that you really want in an enterprise platform that would enable the kind of archiving that's needed when you do your upgrade. I'm going to wrap it up, and then we'll open it up for questions. So there's some real benefits you get from archiving before you do your upgrade. There's a lot of different strategies to follow, but we're seeing that customers are really gravitating toward this key strategy of, as part of an upgrade project, one of the first steps is to slim down your production database. And when you do that, pulling out all the unwanted data, you really dramatically reduce the timing and risk associated with the upgrade project itself. Because as you heard from Julie and my comments earlier, you get a chance to kind of slim down the testing process with multiple iterations of testing if you've got a much slimmer database. And then you get collateral benefits after the upgrade because you have a leaner, meaner, ongoing production database. And that means you can ensure stable performance. If you continue to upgrade, if you continue to archive on an ongoing basis, you can basically keep the size of the production database constant and therefore assure good performance. You get some other collateral benefits in doing that by reducing storage costs and potentially CPU, not having to add additional CPU costs that you otherwise would have to do as the database grows. And then lastly, you create a certain nimbleness and agility in your development and testing processes for ongoing enhancements, all of the stuff that you do on an everyday basis when you're running one of these ERP systems and you're meeting business needs. So having that agility to do those upgrades, those enhancements and customizations faster really means much faster and more efficient business processes. Finally, as part of this process, you get to create this new corporate asset, this corporate archive repository that's available for ready access in virtually any way that you like. And it gives you a mechanism for implementing your corporate data retention policy and meeting your compliance and audit requirements. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm very happy to follow up with any of you afterwards about various strategies for archiving as part of your upgrade. And as I mentioned, we'll be sending out these slides and also the Gartner report as part of this. So let me turn it back to Mike, and we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, thanks, Mark and Julie, for presenting. To the attendees, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them via the question function in GoToWebinar, and we'll get them answered. Here's the first question. What are some of the triggers for when organizations decide it's time to deploy an archiving solution?
Julie, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll start and then you can follow up then. We usually get calls when people are trying to figure out what are different strategies for managing data growth. And one of the things that we found, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, one of the triggers is when they can't meet their backup windows, which is kind of a symptom of a bigger problem. But we really find that it becomes an operational issue in meeting their SLAs or their OLAs. Another one is when organizations are trying to complete a business process, and again, they're not able to do it within the time frame. So, for example, if they're trying to close out their books and generate their financial statements, or they're trying to conduct payroll and they only have so many days to get the checks out, we usually find that data accumulates quite rapidly in those underlying tables, and just the volume of data turns out to impact the business process itself. And then under the DBA analysis, we'll find out that there seems to be some cholesterol in those big tables. I think the third area that we see kind of the big trigger point is really the whole theme of this webinar, which is organizations are looking to do an upgrade. They'll do a trial upgrade, and they see how much bigger their database footprint will be with the new release. And they're looking at the amount of infrastructure and time that they actually have to add to their project to accommodate that volume of data as part of the upgrade process. So, Mark, are you seeing the same things, or is it a little bit different?
Yeah, I think with respect to upgrades, there's kind of a new dimension that archiving adds. So traditionally, when a customer would face a major upgrade like R12 from 11i for Oracle E-Business Suite, their choices were either to do a major upgrade with the whole database or to re-implement, meaning leave the old database behind and just bring forward the active data, say 1 or 2 years of current data. And neither of those approaches was ideal. Now there's a third option, which products like IBM Optim enable, which is to do a full upgrade, but only after you archive the data that you don't really need actively anymore. And that gives you the best of both worlds.
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you. Here's our next question. What criteria is used to justify one?
So we can do that again, Mark, if you like. So the question is, what criteria do organizations that are considering the solutions use to justify a project? And there's a couple of I would say dimensions in terms of ROI that you should consider. One of the things that we use at ESG as a benchmark for organizations to justify a data archiving solution is look at the volume of data and its equivalent storage that it consumes in the data center. Because storage, when you archive, there is a hard dollar savings associated with storage savings. And what I mean by that is if you have a terabyte database and 500 gig of that can be archived to an online archive, you get this immediate freeing up of that storage for a future project, but also because you have on average 7 copies for patch, test, development, standby, DR, all the backups, you can see this correlating savings and storage across the board. So once you refresh those instances. So we use storage savings. I mean, storage is getting cheaper, but the problem is it's not just the physical cost of the storage, but it's the cost of managing and maintaining the infrastructure. So that's one of the key ROI metrics that we see. The other one is how long does it take to do your upgrade, and we look at the number of resources, the number of number of weeks it takes to deploy and upgrade the system, and then the power of the servers required to conduct the test and development processes. All of those have a hard dollar cost that you can associate with the size of the database and the horsepower that you need to get the project done. So those are kind of 2 of the metrics. But I would say that every organization is different, and it kind of depends. But Mark, I'm sure you guys do ROI calculators all the time.
Yeah, we do, and there's a standard methodology that we employ called business value assessment. And what we're finding is that the market is a bit bifurcated. Some customers really require a hard dollar ROI, and you get that through storage cost savings and CPU, addition avoidance. But there are some soft dollar savings that do justify some of these projects, particularly an upgrade, where it's a risk management decision. And then I've also seen some customers actually have their compelling driver is assuring good system performance. And so, these are ones where organizations where the SLAs are really paramount and they can't risk getting out of control in terms of performance. So archiving is the strategy to ensure good performance.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What solutions does Oracle itself have for archiving its various applications? And why would an Oracle customer use a third-party product for archiving?
Yeah, you would expect that Oracle would solve this problem for its customers. And as I mentioned earlier, I have this perspective of having been on the inside at Oracle, and Oracle's a database company, and it's a lot more important for Oracle to get data in than to take it out. So by and large, none of these products has any archiving capability. You do get purge routines with some of the Oracle E-Business Suite modules, but customers don't tend to use them very much, and those just purge data. They don't archive the data for use, and for other purposes. So they're not all that useful. And none of the other products does that very well either. So it turns out that customers have moved over to third party like Optim because they really target solving this problem, particularly with Optim as an overall platform with standard processes that can be applied to any application. And I guess that's just the reality of the market, and we don't really see Oracle moving in this direction, at least not yet.
Yeah, you know, Mark, and I'll just add, you know, a couple of the projects that I've worked on where I've had one or two clients, they've actually built a solution themselves, and they ended up spending more on building a custom archive solution than it would if they had just purchased a third-party off-the-shelf solution. So it's kind of funny because some people say, well, our data model isn't that complicated, we can just do it ourselves. But at the end of the day, I mean, you want to really institutionalize those archive policies and processes. And you know, if you do the cost justification, it sometimes makes better sense to go with a third-party product.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, thanks, guys. Does Oracle certify the IBM Optim solutions with Oracle applications?
Yes, it does. So all of those products that that work through Optim for Oracle E-Business Suite, Siebel, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards out of the box are certified annually by IBM with the process that that's called validation that that Oracle runs with its partners.
Okay, thank you. To the attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them and we'll get them answered. Here's one more. How long does it archive typical Oracle application implementation?
Using Optim, we always try to define projects of 3 months duration or less. And so typically for a large, say a terabyte plus implementation of Oracle E-Business Suite, using the 80-20 rule, most of that data that the real benefit can be done in archiving, say, 3 modules, and that typically can be done in a 3-month project. And then our whole strategy is to enable our customers so that they're self-sufficient to be able to do their own archiving projects and ongoing archiving work by themselves after that period.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark, you know, I would add to, and I would also add to that too that there's a little bit of upfront work that needs to be done before you can kick off a project, and attending these calls are obviously a great way to get started. But when I usually get the calls as an analyst covering this space and people are making inquiries about it, I usually see that discovery phase to the time that they might actually start doing an implementation ranges anywhere from 3 to 9 months.
Mm-hmm. Yep, particularly if they're doing an evaluation and selection process.
Yeah, and then getting budget
way.
And all that stuff. Exactly. Yeah, but once the decision's made, I have seen these Optim implementations go fairly quickly, which is great.
Mike, before we wrap up, I just want to add that I do a lot of writing about this area, as Julie does as well. We keep a blog on our website, s28.com. That's sort of a running commentary on trends in enterprise data management, and people are welcome to take a look at some of the details we've been writing about.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have no more questions. Thank you for presenting, Mark and Julie. It was a great webinar, and thank you to the attendees for attending. We're going to be emailing. We've recorded this webinar, and we will email it out to all the registrants of the webinar, and it'll also be up on S28's website in a couple of days. So thanks again for presenting, and thank you for attending today's webinar.